The sound of her father's fist hitting the dinner table made Olivia Edwards flinch, but she kept her eyes downcast, staring at the untouched plate of beans and cornbread before her. It was 1882 in Randsburg, California, a mining town carved out of the Mojave Desert where dreams came to die under the relentless sun, and where women like her were expected to be seen but never heard. "You are 22 years old, Olivia," her father spat, his voice heavy with disgust. 22 and still unmarried. Do you know what that makes you? A burden, a worthless burden on this family. You are nothing without a man to give you purpose, to give you value. Nothing. Olivia's mother said nothing from her place at the stove, her shoulders hunched in that familiar way that spoke of years of similar silence. Her younger sister, Martha, barely 16, watched with wide eyes that held both pity and fear, knowing that her own turn would come soon enough. "Mr. Henderson has made an offer," her father continued, leaning back in his chair with the satisfaction of a man who believed he had solved a problem. "He is willing to overlook your advancing age and take you as his third wife. He has a good claim up near the Yellow Aster mine. You will accept." Olivia's hands clenched in her lap, her nails digging into her palms. William Henderson was 53 years old, a cruel man whose first wife had died under mysterious circumstances, and whose second wife had run off in the night, leaving behind her own children. Everyone in Randsburg knew what kind of man he was, but no one spoke of it. "I will not marry him," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper but steady nonetheless. The silence that followed was deadly. Her father's face turned a mottled red, and he stood so quickly his chair toppled backward. "You will do as you are told. You have no skills, no prospects, no future. Without a husband, you are nothing, less than nothing. You will marry Henderson or you will leave this house and never return." The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Olivia looked up then, meeting her father's eyes for the first time in the conversation. She saw no love there, no paternal concern, only anger and impatience. She thought of William Henderson's cold eyes and rough hands, and she made her decision. "Then I will leave." The words felt like freedom and terror all at once. Her mother gasped, Martha let out a small cry, and her father's expression shifted from anger to something uglier, something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Out," he said simply. "Take nothing that I have provided. You have 1 hour." Olivia stood on shaking legs and walked to the small room she shared with Martha. She owned very little that was truly hers. A dress her grandmother had made before she died, a hairbrush that had belonged to the same grandmother, and a small leather pouch containing $17 she had saved over the years from selling her needlework. She changed into the dress, a simple but well-made garment of deep blue cotton, packed the hairbrush and money into a small cloth bag, and walked out of the house without looking back. The desert sun was merciless even in the late afternoon, and Randsburg's Main Street was a chaos of activity. Miners covered in dust stumbled between saloons. Freight wagons kicked up clouds of dirt as they rumbled past, and somewhere in the distance, the stamp mills pounded endlessly, crushing ore in their mechanical jaws. Olivia had no plan, no destination, only the knowledge that she could not stay. She walked toward the edge of town, past the assay office and the general store, past the boarding houses that she could not afford, and the saloons where respectable women did not go. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber, and Olivia realized with growing panic that she had nowhere to sleep, no food, and no idea what to do next. "Miss Edwards." The voice made her stop. She turned to find Sam Chen, who ran the general store, standing in his doorway with a concerned expression. He was a kind man, one of the few Chinese merchants who had managed to establish a successful business, despite the prejudice that ran through towns like Randsburg. "Mr. Chen," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I heard what happened," he said quietly. "News travels fast in a town this small. I do not mean to pry, but do you have somewhere to go?" The kindness in his question nearly broke her composure. She shook her head, not trusting herself to speak. Sam Chen nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. "There is a ranch about 5 miles west of here. The Quinn place. Lucas Quinn runs it with his brother and a few hands. I know they were looking for someone to help with cooking and mending. It is honest work, and Lucas is a good man. I can write you a letter of introduction if you would like." Hope flickered in Olivia's chest. "I would be grateful, Mr. Chen, very grateful." He disappeared into his store and returned a few minutes later with a sealed envelope. "The road west is easy to follow, but 5 miles is a long walk. Wait here." He went into the store again and came back with a canteen of water and a package wrapped in brown paper. "Bread and cheese," he explained. "You will need your strength." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, I will repay you when I can." "No need," Sam Chen said with a gentle smile. "Just be safe." The walk west was harder than Olivia had anticipated. The road was little more than a rutted track, and her boots, which had always seemed sturdy enough in town, raised blisters on her heels within the first mile. The sun sank lower, and the temperature began to drop with the swift extremity of the desert. She wrapped her shawl more tightly around her shoulders and kept walking. By the time she saw the ranch house in the distance, the sky had turned deep purple and the first stars were emerging. The Quinn Ranch was larger than she had expected, with a substantial house built of adobe and wood, a large barn, several outbuildings and corrals where she could see horses moving in the twilight. Lamps glowed in the windows of the house, and smoke rose from the chimney. Olivia's feet ached, her throat was dry despite the water Sam Chen had given her, and exhaustion pulled at her like a physical weight. She forced herself to walk up to the front door and knock. The door opened almost immediately, and Olivia found herself looking up at a man who took her breath away. He was tall, with broad shoulders and sun-bronzed skin that spoke of years working outdoors. His hair was dark and slightly too long, curling at his collar, and his eyes were a startling shade of gray-blue that seemed to see right through her. He was perhaps 26 or 27, and there was a strength in his features that had nothing to do with physical power and everything to do with character. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice deep and warm. Olivia remembered herself and held out the letter from Sam Chen. "I am Olivia Edwards. Mr. Chen from the general store in Randsburg said you might be looking for help. He wrote this letter of introduction." The man took the letter, but his eyes remained on her face, taking in her disheveled appearance, the dust on her dress, the exhaustion she could not hide. "I am Lucas Quinn. Come inside, Miss Edwards. You look like you have had a hard journey." He stepped back, and Olivia entered the ranch house. The interior was warm and surprisingly comfortable, with well-made furniture and woven rugs on the wooden floor. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, and she could smell something cooking, though not particularly well. Lucas Quinn opened the letter and read it quickly. When he looked up, his expression was thoughtful. "Sam Chen speaks highly of you. He says you are skilled with a needle and can cook better than most. He also says you are trustworthy and hardworking." "I am all of those things," Olivia said, lifting her chin despite her exhaustion. "I will earn my keep." "I have no doubt," Lucas said quietly, and something in his tone made her look at him more closely. There was no condescension in his expression, no judgment, only a kind of gentle respect that she had never experienced from a man before. We do need help here. My brother Thomas and I run the ranch with 4 hands. We have been trying to manage the cooking and other household tasks ourselves, but as you might imagine, we are not particularly good at it. The job is yours if you want it. Room and board plus $20 a month. $20 a month was generous, more than fair. Olivia nodded quickly. I accept. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Lucas, he corrected. We are not formal here. Have you eaten? You must be hungry after walking from town. As if in response, her stomach growled audibly. Lucas smiled, and Olivia felt warmth spread through her chest at the kindness in that smile. Come to the kitchen. I was just attempting to make dinner, but I will warn you, my skills are limited to things that can be fried or boiled, and sometimes not even then. He led her through the house to a large kitchen where a pot of something was bubbling on the stove. Olivia looked inside and saw what might have started as a stew but had become something closer to murky soup. May I? She asked, gesturing to the pot. Please, Lucas said with evident relief. I would be grateful. Olivia set down her bag and rolled up her sleeves. Despite her exhaustion, there was something soothing about the familiar motions of cooking. She salvaged what she could of the stew, adding salt and some dried herbs she found in the cupboard, cutting up the bread Sam Chen had given her to serve alongside it. By the time the other men came in for dinner, drawn by the improved smell, she had created something actually edible. Thomas Quinn looked so much like his brother that they had to be twins. He had the same dark hair and strong build, though his eyes were brown instead of gray-blue. The 4 ranch hands, whose names she learned were Jack, Pete, Walter, and young Tom, were polite and clearly surprised to find a woman in the kitchen. They all sat down to eat, and the appreciation on their faces as they tasted the improved stew made Olivia feel useful for the first time in longer than she could remember. The conversation flowed around her, talk of horses and cattle, of repairs needed on the south fence, of a coyote that had been causing trouble. No one asked her intrusive questions, though she caught Lucas watching her more than once with that same thoughtful expression. After dinner, Lucas showed her to a small room off the kitchen that was clean and simply furnished with a bed, a dresser, and a washstand. It was not large, but it was hers, and that made it beautiful. The door locks from the inside, Lucas said, showing her the sturdy bolt. You are safe here, Olivia. I give you my word. She believed him. She did not know why, after a lifetime of her father's contempt and the casual cruelty she had witnessed from men like William Henderson, but she believed this man. Thank you, Lucas. He nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Olivia sat on the bed, which was more comfortable than the one she had shared with Martha, and let herself cry for the first time since leaving her father's house. They were not tears of sadness, but of relief, of exhaustion, of a fear that was finally beginning to ease. The next morning, Olivia woke before dawn from habit and began her work. She made breakfast for 7 hungry men, biscuits from scratch, eggs, bacon, and strong coffee. She mended the shirts that had been piling up in a basket in the corner of the kitchen, each one requiring buttons or patches or simply a good hem. She cleaned the kitchen properly, swept the floors, and began planning what she would cook for dinner. The work was hard but satisfying. The men were respectful and appreciative, and no one treated her as if she were a servant. They thanked her for meals, complimented her cooking, and when she needed something from town, Thomas volunteered to ride in and get it for her. But it was Lucas who occupied her thoughts more than she wanted to admit. He was different from any man she had known. He worked as hard as his hands, rising before dawn to tend the horses and not stopping until well after dark. He was fair but firm with his men, treating them with respect but expecting their best in return. He never raised his voice, never used his size or strength to intimidate, and yet everyone on the ranch looked to him for leadership. And he was kind to her in ways that made her heart ache. He brought her wildflowers he found while riding the range, explaining that he thought they might brighten up the kitchen. He noticed when she was tired and suggested she take a rest. He asked her opinion on things, actually listening to her answers as if they mattered. He treated her as if she had value simply because she existed, not because of what she could do for him. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, Olivia was sitting on the porch after dinner, enjoying the cool evening air. The desert stretched out before her, vast and beautiful in the fading light. She heard footsteps and looked up to find Lucas approaching with 2 cups of coffee. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Please," she said, accepting one of the cups. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Finally, Lucas spoke. "Sam Chen sent word today. Your father has been telling people in town that you ran off to avoid an honest marriage proposal, that you are ungrateful and foolish." Olivia felt her stomach clench. "I suppose I am not surprised. Sam thought you should know. He also wanted me to tell you that William Henderson is angry about the situation. He has been drinking heavily and making threats, though Sam does not think he will actually do anything." "Henderson is a coward," Olivia said quietly. "He likes to hurt people who cannot fight back, but he would never face real consequences for his actions." Lucas turned to look at her, his gray-blue eyes serious in the dimming light. "Did your father really try to force you to marry him?" "Yes. He gave me an ultimatum: marry Henderson or leave his house forever. And you chose to leave. It was not a question. I could not marry that man, Lucas. I would rather die." Lucas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and intense. "Your father is wrong about you, Olivia. You are not nothing without a man. You are intelligent, capable, strong, and kind. You have value all on your own, not because of who you might marry, but because of who you are. I have known you for only 2 weeks, but I can see that clearly. Anyone who cannot see it is a fool." The words struck her like a physical blow, but in the best possible way. Tears sprang to her eyes, and she had to look away from the intensity of his gaze. "You do not know what it means to hear someone say that. Then people have not been saying it nearly enough." She laughed, a shaky sound that was half sob. "No one has ever said it. My father made sure I knew from the time I was old enough to understand that my only worth would come from making a good marriage, that without a husband I was useless. He was wrong." Lucas said it with such conviction that she had to believe him. "You are everything already, Olivia. Everything." She turned to look at him then, really look at him, and saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. It was more than kindness, more than respect. It was the beginning of something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "Lucas," she whispered, not sure what she was asking. "I know," he said softly. "It is too soon. You have been here only 2 weeks. You need time to find your footing, to know that you are safe and valued. I will not rush you, Olivia. I just needed you to know the truth. You are not nothing. You never were." The days turned into weeks, and Olivia found herself settling into life at the Quinn ranch with an ease that surprised her. The work was demanding but rewarding. She took pride in the meals she prepared, in the mended clothes and clean house, in the small touches that made the ranch house feel like a home rather than just a place where men slept between long days of work. But more than the work, she found herself drawn to Lucas in ways she had never experienced. She looked forward to seeing him at breakfast, to the conversations they had on the porch after dinner, to the way his face lit up when he smiled. He made her laugh with stories about growing up with Thomas, about the trouble they had gotten into as boys. He asked about her life, about her dreams, about what she wanted for her future, and he listened to her answers as if they were the most important thing in the world. She learned that Lucas and Thomas had inherited the ranch from their father 3 years earlier, after both their parents died of influenza within days of each other. She learned that Lucas loved the land with a fierce passion, that he believed in treating animals and people with respect, that he had turned down multiple offers to sell the ranch because it was his home, and he could not imagine being anywhere else. She also learned that several women in Randsburg and the surrounding area had set their caps at Lucas Quinn, but he had never shown interest in any of them. The ranch hands teased him about it sometimes, and he would just smile and shake his head, changing the subject. One afternoon in her second month at the ranch, Olivia was in the vegetable garden she had planted, pulling weeds and checking on the progress of the tomatoes and beans, when she heard horses approaching. She stood up, wiping her hands on her apron, and felt her heart sink as she recognized one of the riders. William Henderson sat astride a large bay horse, his face red from sun and drink. With him were two other men, both of whom looked like trouble. They stopped at the edge of the garden, and Henderson looked down at her with an expression that made her skin crawl. "Well, well," he said, his words slightly slurred. "If it is not Olivia Edwards, hiding out here like some kind of scared rabbit." "I am not hiding, Mr. Henderson. I am working. Now, if you will excuse me, I have things to do." She turned to go back to the house, but Henderson dismounted and caught her arm, his grip painful. "You owe me an explanation, girl. I made your father a fair offer, and you ran off like some kind of ungrateful child." "Let go of me," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the fear racing through her. "I do not think I will. Maybe I need to teach you some manners, show you what happens to women who do not know their place. The lady asked you to let go." Lucas's voice was quiet, but it carried an edge of steel that made everyone freeze. Olivia looked up to see him standing about 20 feet away, having emerged from the barn. Thomas was beside him, and both brothers looked ready for trouble. Henderson's grip on her arm tightened for a moment, then he released her with a shove that sent her stumbling back. "This is none of your business, Quinn. When you come onto my land and put your hands on someone under my protection, it becomes my business." Lucas walked forward slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving Henderson. "I am going to ask you once to leave. If you refuse, we are going to have a problem." Henderson laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you can take all three of us? I think you are drunk, on my property without invitation, and you just assaulted a woman. I think those are grounds for me to defend my home and the people in it. I also think that even drunk, you are smart enough to know how this ends if you push me." There was a long moment of tension where anything could have happened. Then one of Henderson's companions, the older of the two, spoke up. "Come on, Will. This is not worth it. Let us go back to town." Henderson stared at Lucas for another few seconds, then spat on the ground. "This is not over, Quinn. That girl belongs with me, and her father has the law on his side. Her father has no claim on her. She is an adult woman who made her own choice. Now get off my land." Henderson remounted his horse, jerking the reins hard enough to make the animal toss its head. "You will regret this," he said, then wheeled the horse around and galloped off, his companions following. Lucas turned to Olivia immediately, his hands gentle as they had been firm a moment before. "Did he hurt you?" She looked down at her arm where she could already see bruises forming in the shape of Henderson's fingers. "It is nothing. It is not nothing." Lucas's voice was tight with anger, though she knew it was not directed at her. "Come inside. We need to clean that and make sure you are all right." In the kitchen, Thomas brought out a tin of salve while Lucas carefully examined her arm. His touch was infinitely gentle, and when he looked up at her, His eyes were full of concern and something deeper, something that made her heart race. "I am sorry that happened," he said quietly. "I should have anticipated that Henderson might try something." "You have nothing to apologize for," Olivia said. "You defended me. You protected me. No one has ever done that before. Then people have been failing you your entire life." He applied the salve to her bruises with careful fingers. "I meant what I said before, Olivia. You are under my protection. As long as you are here, no one will hurt you. I promise you that." She believed him. More than that, she realized with a start that she was falling in love with him. The knowledge should have terrified her, but instead it felt like the most natural thing in the world. This man, who treated her with respect and kindness, who saw her as a whole person rather than a piece of property, who made her feel safe and valued and beautiful, had somehow claimed her heart without even trying. "Lucas," she said softly, and he looked up at her, his hand still gentle on her arm. "Thank you for everything." He smiled, that slow, warm smile that lit up his entire face. "You do not need to thank me, Olivia. Taking care of you is not a burden, it is a privilege." The words hung between them, full of unspoken meaning, and Olivia felt something shift in the air. Thomas cleared his throat and made a hasty exit, muttering something about checking on the horses, and suddenly she and Lucas were alone in the kitchen, his hand still touching her, their faces close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his gray eyes. "Olivia," he said, her name like a prayer on his lips. "I know it has only been 2 months, I know you need time, but I need you to know how I feel. I am falling in love with you. Maybe I started falling the moment you knocked on my door, exhausted and determined and so brave. You have turned this house into a home. You have brought light and warmth into my life. And every day I wake up grateful that Sam Chen sent you to me." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were happy tears. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "I did not think I could feel this way. I did not think any man could make me feel safe and valued and beautiful all at once. But you do, Lucas. You make me feel like I matter." "You do matter," he said fiercely. "Not because of me, but because of who you are. I did not make you valuable, Olivia. You were always valuable. I just recognized it." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch reverent, and bent his head slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. She did not want to. When his lips met hers, it was like coming home. The kiss was gentle and sweet and full of promise, and when they finally pulled apart, Olivia felt like her heart might burst from the joy of it. "I want to court you properly," Lucas said, his forehead resting against hers. "I want to give you time to be sure. I want you to know that you have a choice always. If you decide you do not want this, if you decide you want something different for your life, I will respect that. But if you do want this, if you want me, then I promise I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know how extraordinary you are." "I want this," Olivia said without hesitation. "I want you. I have never been more sure of anything in my life." They stood there in the kitchen, wrapped in each other's arms, and Olivia felt a peace she had never known. For the first time in her life, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next few months passed in a blur of happiness. Lucas courted her with a sweetness that made her fall more in love with him every day. He brought her gifts from town, ribbons for her hair, a new dress in a rich green color that made her eyes glow, books to read on quiet evenings. He took her on rides across the ranch, showing her his favorite places, the hidden spring where wildflowers grew in impossible profusion, the high ridge where you could see for miles across the desert. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told him about growing up under her father's constant criticism, about the mother who had been too beaten down to defend her, about the dreams she had harbored in secret of a different kind of life. He told her about losing his parents, about the responsibility of running the ranch, about his hopes for the future. He kissed her often, sweet kisses that left her breathless and longing for more, but he never pushed her for more than she was ready to give. He treated her with a respect that made her love him even more deeply. In the 3rd month of their courtship, Lucas took her into Randsburg for supplies. It was the first time she had been back since leaving her father's house, and she felt a flutter of nervousness as they rode down the main street. People stared and she heard whispers, but Lucas kept his hand on her back, steady and reassuring. They went to Sam Chen's store first, and the merchant's face lit up when he saw them together. "Miss Edwards," he said warmly. "Or perhaps I should say Mrs. Quinn soon." Olivia blushed and Lucas laughed. "We are working on it, Sam. Thank you again for sending her to me. Best thing that ever happened to me." They bought supplies and were loading them into the wagon when Olivia heard a familiar voice. "Olivia." She turned to find her mother standing a few feet away, looking older and more tired than Olivia remembered. Martha was with her, and the younger girl's face broke into a smile. "Olivia," her mother said again, and there were tears in her eyes. "I heard you were working at the Quinn Ranch." "I am glad you are well." "I am very well, Mother." Olivia felt Lucas move closer, a silent show of support. "How are you? How is Martha?" "We are managing. Your father is still angry, but he is always angry about something." Her mother glanced at Lucas, taking in his protective stance, the way his hand rested lightly on Olivia's waist. "Is this Mr. Quinn?" "Lucas Quinn, madam," Lucas said, tipping his hat politely. "He treats you well?" her mother asked, looking at Olivia with something that might have been hope. "He treats me better than I ever thought possible," Olivia said honestly. "He treats me like I matter." Her mother's face crumpled, and for a moment, Olivia saw the grief of a woman who had spent her whole life being told she did not matter, who had allowed her husband to do the same to her daughter. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I should have protected you. I should have stood up to your father. I was a coward." Olivia felt tears sting her eyes. "You did the best you could, Mother." Martha suddenly rushed forward and hugged Olivia tightly. "I miss you," she said. "The house is horrible without you. Father is worse than ever and Mother cries all the time." "I miss you too," Olivia said, hugging her sister back. She looked at Lucas, who nodded slightly as if reading her thoughts. "Martha, if you ever need a place to go, you come to the Quinn Ranch. Do you hear me? No matter what Father says, you always have a place with us." "Both of you do," Lucas added, looking at Olivia's mother. "If things get too difficult, you are welcome at our home." Olivia's mother shook her head. "I made my choice a long time ago. But thank you, Mr. Quinn. Thank you for being the kind of man my daughter deserves." They parted ways then, and Olivia felt both sadness and relief as they rode out of town. Sadness for the family she had lost, relief that she had found something so much better. "Are you all right?" Lucas asked as the ranch came into view. "I am more than all right," Olivia said. "I have you, and that is everything." That evening, after dinner, Lucas asked her to walk with him. They went up to the high ridge he had shown her before, where the sunset painted the desert in shades of gold and crimson. The air was cool, and the breeze carried the scent of sage. "Olivia," Lucas said, taking both her hands in his. "I know we have only known each other for 5 months. I know that by some standards that is not very long, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and your courage. I love the way you sing while you cook and the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love how you have made my house into a home and my life into something beautiful. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, if you will have me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple but beautiful, with a single small diamond that caught the fading light. "Olivia Edwards, will you marry me?" Olivia's heart felt like it might burst from her chest. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Lucas, I will marry you. I love you so much." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with a passion that took her breath away. When they finally pulled apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. "I want to marry you soon," Lucas said. "I do not want to wait." "Is that all right?" "I do not want to wait either," Olivia said. "As soon as possible." They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the ranch. Sam Chen came, as did the ranch hands and several of the neighboring ranchers who had become friends. Thomas stood as Lucas's best man, and to Olivia's surprise and joy, Martha came to stand with her, having slipped away from their father's house early that morning. Olivia wore a new dress Lucas had bought for her, white lace over cream silk, and wildflowers in her hair. Lucas wore his best suit and could not stop smiling. When the traveling preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas kissed her with such tenderness that several people in attendance wiped away tears. The celebration afterwards was joyful and loud, with music and dancing and more food than 10 times their number could have eaten. But Olivia only had eyes for her husband, for the man who had shown her that she was worth loving, that she had value all on her own. When the guests finally left and they were alone in the house that was now truly theirs, Lucas carried her over the threshold of their bedroom. He set her down gently, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "I have never been happier in my entire life," Olivia said honestly. "You have given me everything, Lucas." "No," he said, pulling her close. "You already had everything inside you. I just had the privilege of being the one to recognize it. You are extraordinary, Olivia Quinn. You always were." He kissed her then, and she melted into his arms, into the safety and love she had found with this man. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, full of whispered words of love and gentle discoveries. Lucas was patient and caring, making sure she felt safe and cherished every moment. When she fell asleep in his arms hours later, Olivia felt a contentment so deep it brought tears to her eyes. The first year of their marriage was the happiest of Olivia's life. She and Lucas worked together to build their life, making plans for the ranch, for their future. Thomas moved into the foreman's house, giving them privacy while staying close enough to help run the operation. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Olivia discovered that she loved being a ranch wife, loved the rhythm of the days and seasons, loved being part of something larger than herself. She started a larger garden and began selling her excess vegetables in town, using the money to buy chickens and then a few pigs. Lucas supported every idea she had, treated every suggestion she made with respect and consideration. But there were challenges too. William Henderson continued to cause trouble, spreading lies about Olivia and Lucas around town, trying to damage their reputation. Some of the more conservative townspeople looked down on Olivia for leaving her father's house, for choosing her own path. Her father refused to speak to her and forbade Martha from seeing her, though the younger girl found ways to visit when she could. Through it all, Lucas was her rock. When she came home from town upset about something someone had said, he held her and reminded her that their opinion did not matter. When she worried about Martha, he helped her come up with ways to stay in touch with her sister. When she had doubts about herself, he gently but firmly reminded her of her worth. "You are everything, Olivia," he would say, pulling her close. "Everything already. You do not need anyone else's approval. You only need to know your own value." And slowly she began to believe it. Not because Lucas told her, but because she could see it in how she had changed. She stood taller now, spoke with more confidence, made decisions without second-guessing herself. She had opinions and she shared them. She had dreams and she pursued them. She was becoming the woman she had always been meant to be, the woman who had been buried under years of her father's contempt. A year and a half after their wedding, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She told Lucas one evening after dinner, and the joy on his face was something she would remember for the rest of her life. "A baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our baby. Are you happy?" She asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," he said, pulling her into his arms. "You are giving me everything, Olivia. A home, a life, and now a child. I am the luckiest man alive." "I am the lucky one," she said, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. "You saved me, Lucas." "No," he said firmly, tilting her chin up so she had to look at him. "You saved yourself. You were the one who had the courage to walk away from a life you did not want. You were the one who walked 5 miles across the desert to find a new future. You were the one who built this life with your own 2 hands. I just had the privilege of being here to witness it." The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia was sick for the first few months, and the desert heat made the later months uncomfortable. But Lucas was attentive and caring, making sure she rested, bringing her cold water and fanning her when the heat became unbearable, rubbing her swollen feet in the evenings. 8 months into her pregnancy, on a hot September afternoon in 1884, Martha arrived at the ranch in tears. She was 17 now, and their father had arranged a marriage for her to a man even worse than William Henderson, a violent drunk twice her age who had already buried 2 wives. "I will not marry him," Martha said, clinging to Olivia. "I will not end up like his other wives. Please, Olivia, let me stay here. I will work, I will earn my keep. Just please do not make me go back." "Of course you can stay," Olivia said immediately, looking at Lucas, who nodded his agreement. "You are family. This is your home now." When their father came looking for Martha 2 days later, Lucas met him at the property line. Olivia watched from the porch, one hand on her swollen belly, as her husband faced down her father. "That girl belongs to me," her father shouted. "She is my daughter and she will do as I say." "She is an adult woman and she has made her choice," Lucas said calmly. "She will not be marrying the man you chose, and she will not be returning to your house. She is under my protection now, just as Olivia is. You have no right, I have every right to protect my family on my own land. If you continue to harass us, I will speak to the sheriff. Now leave and do not come back." Her father left, still shouting threats, but he never returned. Martha stayed at the ranch and blossomed there, much as Olivia had. She helped with the household work, took over the garden, and slowly lost the hunted look she had carried with her from their father's house. In October, when the heat finally broke and the nights turned cool, Olivia went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Lucas looked terrified, clutching her hand and telling her over and over that she could do this, that she was strong, that he loved her. Finally, after nearly 20 hours, their son was born. He was perfect, with dark hair like his father and lungs that announced his arrival to anyone within a mile. Lucas held him with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face, and looked at Olivia with such love that it took her breath away. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for this, for him, for everything." They named him James, after Lucas's father, and he became the center of their world. Lucas was a devoted father, changing diapers and walking the floor with the baby when he was fussy, singing off key lullabies that made Olivia laugh. He treated their son with the same gentle respect he showed everyone, even though James was too small to understand. As James grew, Olivia watched Lucas teach him about the ranch, about treating animals with kindness, about the value of hard work. She saw him model what a good man looked like, what a good husband and father looked like, and she knew their son would grow up with none of the poison her father had poured into her. 2 years after James was born, their daughter arrived. They named her Rose, and she had her mother's determination and her father's steady temperament. Lucas was just as devoted to her as he was to James, and Olivia loved watching him with their children, seeing him give them the love and respect she had never received from her own father. The ranch continued to prosper. They added more cattle, bought the neighboring property when it came up for sale, built a new barn, and expanded the house. But more than the material success, they had built something precious. A family based on love and respect. A home where everyone knew they had value simply because they existed. Martha eventually married one of the ranch hands, a kind young man named David who treated her like she was precious. They built a house on the far side of the property and started their own family. Olivia's mother came to visit occasionally, usually when her father was away, and though she never left him, she seemed to find some peace in seeing her daughters happy. William Henderson eventually drank himself to death, and Olivia felt nothing but pity for him. Her father died when James was 5 years old, and though Olivia attended the funeral, she shed no tears. Her mother came to live with Martha and David after that, and in her final years, she told Olivia more than once how proud she was of her, how brave she thought she had been. The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work, of watching their children grow, of building a legacy together. Lucas never stopped treating Olivia like she was precious, never stopped telling her that she was everything, and she never stopped being grateful for the day she had walked away from her father's house and toward the life she was meant to live. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Lucas took her back up to the ridge where he had proposed. They were both older now, marked by years of sun and work, but when he looked at her, his eyes held the same love they had held that first night. "I was thinking about something," he said, pulling her close. 20 years ago, you walked 5 miles across the desert to find a new life. You were brave and strong and determined, and you changed everything for both of us. You changed everything for me," Olivia said. "You showed me that I had value." "No," Lucas said, just as he had said so many times over the years. "You already had value, I just recognized it. And I have spent 20 years being grateful that you let me be part of your life, that you chose me, that you built this beautiful life with me." Olivia looked out over the ranch, at the house where their children were probably getting into some kind of mischief, at the land they had worked together to build into something special, at the life they had created through love and respect and hard work. "Do you remember what you told me that first night?" she asked. "When Henderson came to the ranch, I told you a lot of things that night. You told me I was everything already." She turned to look at him, this man who had given her so much simply by seeing her clearly. "You were right, Lucas. I was everything already, I just needed someone to help me see it, and then I needed time to believe it. But you know what?" "What?" he asked, smiling. "Now I know it. I know my own worth. I know that I am valuable not because of who I married or what I can do for others, but because of who I am. And I know that because you loved me enough to show me the truth." Lucas kissed her, soft and sweet, and they stood there on the ridge as the sun set over the desert. Two people who had found each other and built something extraordinary out of respect and love, and the simple truth that every person has value, whether anyone recognizes it or not. Their story became something of a legend in Randsburg and the surrounding area. People talked about the woman who had walked away from an arranged marriage and found true love, about the cowboy who had treated her with the respect she deserved. Young women facing similar pressures heard the story and found courage. Men learned that true strength came from lifting others up, not tearing them down. James grew up to be a fine rancher, running the Quinn ranch with the same integrity his father had shown. Rose became a teacher, fighting to give all her students, especially the girls, the education and respect they deserved. Both of them married for love, choosing partners who treated them as equals, and both of them told their own children the story of their mother's courage and their father's respect. As Olivia and Lucas grew older, they never lost the love that had brought them together. On quiet evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the desert, holding hands and talking about their day, their children, their memories. And every so often, Lucas would pull her close and whisper the words that had changed her life all those years ago. "You are everything, Olivia, everything already." And she would smile and rest her head on his shoulder, secure in the knowledge that it was true. She had always been everything. She had just needed to find someone who could see it, and then she had needed to learn to see it herself. The journey had been difficult, but it had led her to a life filled with love and respect and joy, to a man who had shown her what true partnership looked like, and to a family built on the foundation of mutual respect and unwavering love. In their final years, when age had slowed them both and their hair had turned silver, they would still take walks around the ranch, hand in hand, marveling at what they had built together. The ranch had grown and prospered, but more importantly, it had become a place where everyone knew they had value, where respect was given freely, where love flourished. Lucas passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, with Olivia beside him. His last words to her were the same words he had been telling her for more than 50 years. "You are everything." Olivia lived for 5 more years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of whom had learned from her example what it meant to stand up for yourself, to recognize your own worth, to build a life based on love and respect. She spent her final years telling stories, making sure that everyone knew about the cowboy who had seen her value when no one else did, and about the journey she had taken from believing she was nothing to knowing she was everything. When she passed away at the age of 81, she was buried beside Lucas on the ridge where he had proposed to her, overlooking the ranch they had built together. The whole community came to the funeral, and person after person spoke about how she had touched their lives, how she had shown them what courage looked like, how she had proved that every person has value whether anyone recognizes it or not. Her story lived on, passed down through generations, a reminder that we are all everything already, that our worth is inherent and not dependent on what others think of us, and that true love sees us clearly and helps us see ourselves the same way. It was a story of a young woman who had walked 5 miles across the desert to find her future, of a cowboy who had recognized her worth when she could not see it herself, and of the beautiful life they had built together on the foundation of mutual respect, unwavering love, and the simple truth that every person matters, simply because they exist. The Quinn Ranch still stands today, run by their descendants, a testament to what can be built when 2 people see each other clearly and choose to build something together. And on quiet evenings, when the sun sets over the Mojave Desert in shades of gold and crimson, locals swear you can still see 2 figures standing on the ridge, hand in hand, watching over the land they loved and the legacy they created. A legacy of courage, respect, and a love that changed everything.